Hey everyone, and welcome back to Senior Balance Hub. I'm here today to share something deeply personal with you, a story I've been wanting to tell for months, but wasn't quite ready to share until now. A year ago, at 58 years old, I found myself living completely alone for the first time in over 3 decades. And let me tell you, nothing could have prepared me for what that journey would actually look like. If you're considering living alone, going through a major life transition, or you're just curious about what it's really like to start over in your 50s, stay with me. Because what I discovered this year changed everything I thought I knew about independence, happiness, and what it means to truly know yourself. But first, let me paint you a picture of day one. I remember standing in the doorway of what was now my house, not our house, not the family house, but my house. I watched that moving truck disappear down the street, and for the first time in 34 years, I was completely alone. The silence hit me like a wall. Not the peaceful kind you might imagine, but this thick, almost suffocating quiet that made me realize I'd forgotten what actual silence even sounded like. All those years of family noise, conversations, TV in the background, suddenly it was just me, the refrigerator humming, and the sound of my own breathing. I made myself a cup of tea, something I'd done thousands of times before, but this time I didn't have to ask anyone if they wanted one too. It sounds simple, but in that moment, it felt revolutionary and terrifying all at once. Those first few weeks were like meeting myself for the first time. I had to remember what I actually liked when nobody else was watching. Here's something that surprised me. I'm a morning music person, not a morning news person. For 34 years, we had the news on because that's what worked for everyone. But me. I come alive with classical piano playing softly while I drink my coffee. Chopin, specifically, who knew? The grocery shopping was another revelation. Without considering anyone else's dietary restrictions or preferences, I wandered those aisles like an explorer. Good cheese. Yes. Fresh flowers for no special occasion. Absolutely. Ice cream for dinner on a Tuesday. Well, nobody was there to judge that life choice. But it wasn't all wonderful discoveries. There were moments of profound loneliness that completely blindsided me. I'd reach for my phone to text someone about something funny on TV, only to realize that kind of mundane sharing that happens in long relationships doesn't really work with friends. Your bestie doesn't necessarily want to hear about that ridiculous commercial, but a life partner would have laughed right along with you. Now let me be honest about something that took me months to admit out loud. I was scared. Not just about practical stuff, but about real safety concerns that women our age face when living alone. The first time I heard a strange noise at 2 a.m., I lay there with my heart pounding, trying to decide if I was being paranoid or appropriately cautious. It was the neighbor's cat, but that experience taught me something important. I needed systems that made me feel secure without making me feel like a prisoner. I invested in a good security system, not because I was living in fear, but because peace of mind was worth every penny. I established routines with neighbors, not intrusive check-ins, but natural neighborly awareness. Mrs. Chen next door, and I have an unspoken agreement. If either of our newspapers sits on the driveway past 10 a.m., the other will knock. Simple, but it matters. I had to learn the difference between being careful and being paralyzed by fear. Yes, I double-check locks now. Yes, I'm more aware of my surroundings. But I refuse to let reasonable precautions turn into unreasonable restrictions on my freedom. Around month 3, something shifted. The guilt I'd been carrying about enjoying my solitude started fading, replaced by what I can only describe as profound relief. I started making what I playfully called selfish choices, decisions based purely on what I wanted. I painted the living room this gorgeous deep teal that I'd always loved, but never suggested because it felt too bold for a family home. I rearranged furniture to create a reading nook by the window, space that had been practical before, but now served my desire for the perfect Sunday morning spot with a book and coffee. I started eating dinner at 5:30 because that's when I got hungry, not at 7 because that's when everyone could gather. Turns out I prefer having my main meal earlier and a light snack later, something I'd never been able to explore when coordinating with everyone else's schedules. The freedom extended to my social life too. I stopped accepting invitations out of obligation and started choosing activities based on genuine interest. That book club I'd been meaning to join for years. I finally went and discovered women who've become some of my closest friends. Living alone gave me an unexpected gift, a completely new relationship with my own health and wellness. Without constantly considering others' schedules and needs, I could finally listen to what my body was telling me. I became an early riser, not because I had to get everyone else ready, but because I discovered I genuinely love those quiet hours before the world wakes up. I started taking long walks, not as exercise I was supposed to do, but as moving meditation. For the first time in decades, I could be sick without feeling guilty about how it affected others. When I caught a nasty cold in month 5, I stayed in bed for 2 full days, sleeping when tired and eating soup when I felt like it. There was something healing about focusing entirely on recovery. I also noticed patterns I'd never seen before. I have more energy in the afternoon than morning, something that had been masked by years of adapting to other people's rhythms. This led me to restructure my days around my natural energy patterns instead of fighting against them. One of the most unexpected parts of living alone was how it transformed my friendships. Without a built-in social partner, I had to become more intentional about relationships. But instead of being a burden, this became one of the greatest gifts. I started hosting intimate dinner parties where I could really connect with friends without the distractions of couple socializing. These evenings became treasured events, not just for me but for friends who were hungry for deeper, more meaningful connections. I joined a photography group, started volunteering at the animal shelter, and signed up for a cooking class. In each place, I met people as myself, not as someone's wife or mother, but as an individual with my own interests and personality. The quality of my friendships deepened in ways I hadn't expected. Without the buffer of family obligations, I found myself having more honest, vulnerable conversations. Friends started confiding in me differently, and I realized that living alone had made me a better listener and more present friend. Perhaps the most surprising aspect was the creative explosion that happened around month 6. With no one to consider but myself, I started pursuing interests I'd set aside years ago. I dusted off the piano that had been gathering dust in the corner. 3 months later, I was taking lessons again and spending at least an hour each day playing. The music filled the house in a way that felt healing and energizing. I started writing, not with grand ambitions, but because I had thoughts I wanted to capture. What began as journaling became poetry, then short stories. I joined a writers' group and discovered I had a voice that was entirely my own. The creative freedom extended to everyday activities too. Experimental cooking without worrying if others would like it. Decorating for holidays exactly how I wanted. Playing my music as loud as I wanted, watching whatever appealed to me, staying up late reading without disturbing anyone. Let me talk about something often glossed over, the financial reality. Living solo means covering all household expenses yourself, no splitting mortgage, utilities, or groceries. But it also means complete control over financial decisions, and I discovered this autonomy more than made up for the increased responsibility. I started budgeting differently, focusing on what truly mattered to me rather than compromise purchases that tried to please everyone. More on fresh flowers and good coffee, less on bulk buying that made sense for a larger household. The clarity around my financial priorities was liberating. I could make decisions about everything from vacations to household purchases based purely on my own values and desires. This led to more thoughtful spending and, surprisingly, better financial satisfaction even though my expenses had increased. If I could go back and prepare my 58-year-old self for this journey, here's what I'd want her to know. The loneliness is real, but it's not permanent. Those first months when silence feels oppressive will give way to appreciation for peace and quiet. Loneliness will evolve into solitude, and solitude is a gift, not punishment. You're not being selfish by enjoying your own company. Decades of putting others first doesn't mean you owe the world a lifetime of self-sacrifice. Taking pleasure in your independence isn't selfish, it's healthy. Your relationships will change, but mostly for the better. Some friendships may fade as you become more selective about your time and energy. But the relationships that remain will be deeper, more authentic, and more satisfying than you imagined possible. Trust your instincts about safety without becoming paralyzed by fear. Take reasonable precautions, create support systems, but don't let worry rob you of the freedom that living alone provides. And embrace the experiment. Create support systems, but don't let worry rob you of the freedom that living alone provides. And embrace the experimentation. This is your chance to discover who you are when you're not defined by relationships to others. Try new things, rediscover old interests, and don't be afraid to change your mind about what you like or want. As I approach the 1-year anniversary of this solo living adventure, I can honestly say it's been one of the most transformative periods of my adult life. I've rediscovered parts of myself I'd forgotten existed and developed new aspects of my personality I didn't know were possible. The woman who was terrified of that first night alone has been replaced by someone who genuinely looks forward to coming home to her own space. I've learned that living alone doesn't mean being alone, it means having the freedom to choose when you want company and when you want solitude. Would I choose to share my life with a partner again someday? Maybe. But if I do, it will be from choice rather than necessity, companionship rather than dependence. Living alone has taught me that I'm complete on my own, which means any future relationship will be an addition to my life, not a completion of it. For any woman considering living alone for the first time later in life, I want you to know this: it's not settling for less. It's not giving up on love or companionship. It's not admitting defeat or accepting loneliness. It's choosing yourself, possibly for the first time in decades. And that choice, as I've discovered, can be the beginning of the most authentic, joyful, and free chapter of your entire life. The house still gets quiet, but now I hear peace rather than emptiness. The space still feels big, but now I see room to grow rather than room to fill. And me? I'm not just surviving on my own, I'm thriving in ways I never imagined possible at 58. Sometimes the life you never planned for turns out to be exactly the life you needed. If this resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Are you living alone for the first time? Considering it? Or maybe you have wisdom to share from your own solo living experience. Let's start a conversation. And if you found value in today's story, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to Senior Balance Hub. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our conversations about navigating this exciting phase of life with wisdom, courage, and grace. At Senior Balance Hub, we believe your 50s, 60s, and beyond aren't about winding down, they are about stepping into your power. Your most balanced, authentic years. They are just getting started. Thanks for letting me share this deeply personal journey with you today. I'll see you in the next video, where we'll continue exploring what it means to live boldly and beautifully at every stage of life. Until then, remember, you're not too old to start over, and you're never too experienced to try something new.